wonder if anybody will join. Looks like everything's set up from my side. It's earlier than before. Well, I'll just work and we'll see if anybody watches this in the end. So I'm trying to do these railroad diagrams and put them in Python's documentation, which means basically in the Python language reference we have lexical analysis, which has some grammar for tokens, which looks very confusing and might be easier to understand if we had these diagrams. Then we have expressions, which have the same thing. We have simple statements, compound statements, top level components, and so on. So what I've done 2 weeks ago and then improved a bit of the stream is these diagrams. So since last time there were some changes. I made these colorful to distinguish the tokens from the other rules, and also they should correspond better to the actual grammar that Python uses, in which the rules are ordered. So so the parser will choose the first line that it can, and then if that parses well, then it doesn't go on to the others until it needs to. So there's no reordering. Also, if something's optional, well, here the star expressions are optional, so the line, the straight line goes under it. What I've also done is simplify the diagrams a bit, which made the code a little more unreadable. And I've also inlined the rules that only appeared once in the whole grammar. So if simple statement had a reference to assignment and there was no other mention of assignment anywhere else, then this assignment gets inlined into this diagram. So we don't have as many diagrams, but we do have some giant diagrams that we might want to break up later. But some of these are very small and they're much better off being inlined. To do these kinds of transformations, I don't have it open. To do these kinds of transformations, where does this live? Peg generator, PyGen, railroad. I've defined my own classes for the various items. So I take whatever the parser parses, which is some nodes which have some extra information that I don't really want to preserve, and some extra information might be added, so I can't really create new parser nodes very safely. So I convert that to my items, which are just what I need. I can simplify these, so I have containers, which is the choice, like here, choose one of those. And I have sequence, which is stuff one after each other. And there are various optimizations I can do on these. And after it's all optimized, I call this as railroad method, which converts everything to the types used in the railroad diagram library. These, of course, don't allow any kind of reordering or restructuring simplification. So I only convert to that as the last step, and that gives me this diagram. Now the simplification has become kind of convoluted by now, so I guess I will need to somehow make it simpler if I want to send this as a pull request, or maybe add comments. But for now, I'm pretty happy with how the diagrams are generated. And I would like to move to the next big part, which I will need to do, and that is plug this into the documentation somehow. Now the problem with the documentation is that for this lexical analysis, these rules only appear in the documentation. I don't think the tokenizer is actually described with this regular grammar. Let's confirm that. So where does the tokenizer live? Where would the tokenizer live in CPython? So this pigeon might generate a tokenizer for us. Oh, this is a tokenizer for the peg generator itself, maybe. Oh no, it imports tokenize. So it imports the public tokenization modules, and those are probably in parser. There's a tokenizer. Where do things live here? I guess the tokenizer might be generated. I don't know where the actual source code for tokenizer is. Token.c, that's the list of tokens. And then the parser itself, does that include the tokenizer? Haven't seen the rules for it. Might need to ask the experts for that. So there's UTF-8 tokenizer. I guess that handles the encoding. There's string tokenizer, which handles encoding. Sets up a tokenizer from string. Okay, there's the readline tokenizer, which I guess is tied to the readline library for the REPL. There's file tokenizer, which sets up tokenization for a file. And where is the actual definition? Oh, it's parser lexer. Okay. Lexer. Okay, so this looks like the thing that gives us tokens. Handles f strings. And gets the individual tokens. So it handles tabs, backslashes to continue the line, new lines, blank lines, indentation and dedentation. And this is all handwritten C, it looks like. So there's no grammar this is generated from. This is just all procedural. And the way it works is then described in the documentation as actual grammar rules. So I don't think I can really add a set of grammar rules that Python itself would use that would involve rewriting the whole tokenizer, and I don't think that's a good goal for now. So maybe for these tokens it would be a good idea to just use the grammar that's in the docs themselves. So maybe I can just write a file with the grammar and generate the railroad diagrams for that from that. Right, let's see. For the next thing, the documentation has these grammar rules for, like, Atom is identifier, literal, or enclosure, and then what an enclosure is, and so on. And these don't really correspond, well, they correspond to the grammar. Let's see, do we have Atom here? So here an Atom is an identifier, right? That's this name. A literal, that's this stuff, and dot as well. And then there's enclosure, which is lists and tuples and dicts and sets. Right, so this is somehow simplified. It's hopefully correct. I don't think it's generated in any way. We don't really have, or do we have names like identifier? We don't really have names like an identifier in the actual grammar file. So that will be a problem with generating the diagrams from the thing that Python actually uses, because currently that's not done in the docs. So I guess before we even get to generating the diagrams, we should generate this part of the documentation from the actual grammar. And then we need to simplify it somehow, because this is unreadable as documentation. It has a lot of extra information like the rules, what the parser should do. It has some invalid statements that the documentation can ignore. It has some type comments which we probably don't need. It has look-aheads, or these cut operations that we can ignore. Hopefully they're just there for optimization. Maybe in the pull request review someone can confirm that. But yeah, we'll somehow need to consolidate these two things so we can generate the diagrams. So I see two things I could do right now. The first would be to basically write a grammar file for the tokens and try generating the railroad diagrams for that. And the second thing I could do is try to generate this grammar description from that grammar description. And let's see. In the discuss thread, I said I would do the latter, try to make these two correspond to each other better. So maybe let's try with that. So there are 3 pages worth of docs, or 4 pages worth of docs. They kind of go from the bottom up, so they start with the smallest parts of the grammar and end with the biggest part, like the whole file, the whole input. And the grammar file goes the other way. So there is file, that's named file input here. There's interactive, which is named interactive input here. And there's eval here, and that's named eval input here. I guess either I need to rename one of those. So I need to say file input here, or just file here. Or I need to somehow introduce an alias so I can rename this rule for the purposes of documentation. I guess if I do that, it would be best to put the alias in this file directly. I don't know how hard it would be to rename this file to file input. Probably everything would break. Let's see, can I actually do that? Regenerate everything. Make everything. Yep, and I get some errors. Something was the file rule, which I probably just renamed to file input rule. No, file rule, did you mean dict rule? So this is in parser.c. Oh, it's this part. There's a bit of extra C code, a function called peggenparse, which takes a parser and gives you the result by parsing one of the 3 top level rules. So I guess if I just rename this to file input rule, oh, I need to regenerate everything. Maybe I should regenerate just the parser. Ooh, and Python built successfully. That's interesting. So this file input rule is, well, if the tests pass and everything, I guess that's only local to this file. So it doesn't appear anywhere else in actual Python. It only appears in this file, and of course in the generated documentation. So that's pretty nice. That would mean I am probably allowed to change these rule names. And grammar maintainers might accept that pull request if the name is actually better. So I guess that's a question for a wider audience. Is file a better name than file input here? Who knows? And anyway, here it says that file input is either a new line or a statement repeated over and over. Here it says that file input is statements, maybe even list of statements, or optional statements, and then an end marker. And statements are a statement repeated. That's interesting. Does statements appear anywhere else? Oh, blocks. Blocks has statements. And if you have a block in Python, that's this colon and then an indented block, then it needs to have at least one statement. So that's what happens here. Statements is at least one statement, and then that's made optional over here. So how can I generate something sensible from this description? Like, this doesn't really appear in the actual grammar. I will need to change the docs somehow. And this probably needs to include this probably needs to have the statements rule inlined somehow. So it will say, I don't know, either optional repeated statements and then an end marker, or maybe even change the optional and repeated to 0 or more. And then it needs to link to statement, which is described somewhere else in compound statements. So the statement rule, which is statement list new line compound statement, that's the old form of the grammar. It says statement is either a compound statement or simple statements. So that's pretty much this, I guess. And statement list is then the simple statements, and compound statement is the same. So I guess simple statements is a better name here, and we want to change the name in the documentation or keep the name in the grammar. But we do have the statement rule defined over here. So I guess the documentation here should say file input, should either say file input is statement plus, and statement is file inputs is statements and marker, and then statements is statement plus, and the statement should be a link to the other parts of the docs. Right, so we need to, when we have the grammar file, we need to be able to generate the documentation for one of these rules. We need to be able to inline other rules in there, either directly, like substitute these statements or the statement plus in here when that's more readable, or do it like this with more definitions that support the one we're trying to document. Because, for example, the statement list probably doesn't make sense on its own. It's just a part of this statement. I don't know if it actually appears anywhere else. That's the thing with grammars. You can reference the rule from anywhere else. But if for example, the compound statement only appears over here, then it should probably be documented with that. So how to do that? We have these sections in the documentation that each documents a part of the grammar, and we'll somehow need to cut up this grammar into those sections. How to do that? I guess we'll need something like a file that lists the top level things we want to document, like this file input and this where was that, this statement. With that in hand, we can sort of partition this grammar file into things that go together and things that should be inlined or included in the more important stuff. And then when the documentation is generated, we can take the necessary parts, because the documentation here really relies on the fact that statement is documented somewhere else. So when Sphinx is rendering this page, I don't think it has a good way to know that, you know, statement is defined over on that page. So we should only include like the statements list and leave that for somewhere else. Maybe there's a way for Sphinx to know that somehow, but at least in the first pass it'll be easier to just put it in a separate file. So let's see how the documentation is built. Now, first of all, let me commit this change. Diff. I've changed a lot of generated, or at least one generated files. That's parser.c. The changes I've actually made is rename file rule to file input rule. I don't know if that will make it to the final pull request, but for now, let me commit it. It's something that's possible. Name the file rule to file input. To match docs. Right, and now let's look at the docs. So in doc, let's see what this page is. Reference top level components HTML. So in the docs, it will probably appear in reference top level components.rst, and let's see how this is written. Oh, there's an index, complete Python programs, file input, and there's a production list with the kind of subtype of Python grammar that defines this. File input is defined as new line or statement. This uses a single colon, and that gets made into this dot equals. And I'm assuming that this production list is a Sphinx thing. Grammar production displays. So special markup is available for displaying productions of a formal grammar. Of course, you need that in a generic documentation tool. I guess Sphinx was first made for Python itself. Markup is simple and does not attempt to model all aspects of PNF or derived forms, but provides enough to allow context-free grammars to be displayed in a way that causes users of a symbol to be rendered as hyperlinks. So that's important. So we have productions. Productions can span multiple lines with these colons. Blank lines are not allowed. Token names and these backticks generate cross-references to the productions of these tokens, and they can be referenced. The production group argument serves to distinguish different sets belonging to different grammars. So all of the Python grammar production displays should have this Python grammar, and maybe we'll have a different one for the tokens. So this lexical analysis. No, it's still Python grammar. Okay. So let's see if we actually have anything else. Oh, there's Python grammar, and there's also format string and format spec. Interesting. So format, let's see. That's interesting to me. So that's in library. String. And that's a format string for the format method of strings, which is different from the f strings and the Python grammar. And I guess for format spec it'll be similar. Format specification mini language. So this is what most types use, or at least in number types use for their format specification. So these tokens can have different names from the ones in Python grammar, and they won't clash. I assume that's the intent here. All right, so the URL here includes Python grammar. So their names. This is a namespace. Okay, that's clear to me now. Oh, I just realized I might not be sharing the screen to Discord. Sorry for that. Should be there now. Right, what else do we have in Sphinx? Tokens refer to productions from the current group. You can refer to productions of another grammar. We might want that for the tokenizer productions, if we actually split those two. If the group shouldn't be shown, it can be prefixed with this squiggly tilde. To refer to an unnamed grammar, there's colon, that's okay. Outside of a production group, the name must be given. No further structured text parsing is done in the production, so you don't have to escape all these pesky characters. Alright, so that's a built-in Sphinx thing. And if I want to actually generate this, how would I go around doing that? Does production list have some kind of API? I don't know anything about Sphinx. So I don't know anything about Sphinx, but I know things can be generated. Well, that's a lie. I know stuff about Sphinx. I've done Sphinx things before. I've done like these extensions. There's like C annotations, which is some kind of Sphinx plugin that I already modified. So I could look at that. Let's see if we have interesting extensions that I should emulate. So we have highlighter for ASDL. So this is the thing that highlights the full grammar specification. So this thing, and I guess it hides some of the things that aren't useful. So that's just a highlighter and doesn't generate new stuff. So let's not use that. C annotations, put annotations on documentation of C API. There's escape for CHM, which doesn't look relevant. There's glossary search, which features search results for glossary items prominently. No generation here either. Patch level extracts version info from patchlevel.h. What does this do? This doesn't do anything Sphinx related, I guess. There's peg highlight. Oh no, this is the one that highlights the grammar specification. And there's py specific. This looks relevant. Okay, this is something that marks stuff with as implementation detail or availability. It adds an audit event directive. Oh, this looks useful. So let's see. right? So this raises an auditing event, blah, 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 with argument, blah, 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 is apparently generated by this class. Where is it? In, I hate these small windows. Using command line. Using command line. Right, it's generated with audit event, CPython run command, commands, and whatever this is. So this is what I'll need. I will want to go in here, top level components, and instead of whatever is there, I will want to put in a directive like this. And let's say peg fragment, give it some arguments like file input here, and then I guess I can write a Sphinx plugin that will generate this peg fragment or register this whatever it is, directive, and somehow generate the documentation for it. That'll be interesting. So do I add this to PySpecific, which is quite big by now? I will probably want to start a new file and maybe merge it afterwards, so I know where I am. So save this as doc tools extension peg fragment.py, and what do I need? I need a directive. Oh, maybe there's some documentation for writing directives. I don't need to cargo cult what's already there. Application API Sphinx add directive. Okay. Register docutils directive. So this gives me a directive that has run. For more details, see docutils documentation. Alright, there's a directive class that I subclass. There's required arguments, optional arguments, specification. When an implementation is being run, the class is instantiated and the run method is executed. And we have self.name, arguments, options, blah, blah, blah. And we want to return a list of nodes which will be inserted. Okay. So we want to return a list of nodes. Let's start with something really simple. Let's copy this example. And I want to return a list of nodes, and I did that in my C annotations here, hopefully. So there's a nodes.text that just gives me text. Maybe I can use that. Who knows what kinds of other nodes there are? Maybe there's something better. So I need to import nodes from docutils. And this will be a list. Okay, I already know the name of my new directive. It will be named peg fragment. What is this? Class name, class option unchanged. Ooh. Whatever that is. Option spec. Dictionary mapping known option names to conversion functions. Okay, so I guess this means my new directive takes a class option that sets the class and name, which sets the name somehow. Well, I don't know. It was in the example. So it has one required argument and 0 optional arguments. That looks okay for now. Final argument white space, indicating if the final argument can contain white space. Looks good. Okay, what's next? There's option conversion functions. Oh, here's unchanged. Oh, this probably adds some text to my output. Okay. Error handling, registering directives, examples, base admonition, there's a self content, no options, there's image which has alt, height, width, scale, blah blah blah, and it passes those options to node's image, right? So I guess the class and name won't be used automatically. I need to use them somehow, so let's comment them out for now. Now I guess I need to register this Sphinx plugin somewhere. So how is that done? docconfpy has py specific. So I put peg fragment in here and hope that is correct. Now I build the documentation. I don't have the necessary virtual env for that. So let's, oh yeah. Put it in doc. So much stuff needed for building docs. I guess we'll also include the diagramming tool as well soon. And now I'll wait for Sphinx to build stuff. Man, Sphinx is really slow. Or maybe we just have a lot of documentation. Apparently it uses all my cores in my processor, but I don't really see it doing that. Looks like it's single-threaded. And now there's a warning. Treated as error. This extension does not declare if it's safe for parallel reading. I guess that's why we didn't. This wasn't read in parallel. So I guess all the extensions need to do that somehow. Now setup. Setup directive, and this returns parallel read safe is true. Okay, that might be something to put in this documentation for Sphinx, right? Let me add a note. I don't know if I'll get to it. Okay, so we now say that this is parallel read safe. And the stuff is now parallel. That's perfect. Unknown directive type peg fragment. Oh, I have a dash here, and I didn't use a dash here. Dash is probably better for Sphinx. I use it everywhere else. So let's do that. Hopefully things are faster now. Should also use a better text here. Sphinx is now writing output. I wonder if there's anything I could do to speed this up. Apparently the docs build is pretty involved and does a lot of work converting restructured text to HTML. And there we go. Build finished. Let's see how it looks. So this was in the language reference. Reference and top level components. Oh, and here's my little placeholder text. So I guess I can generate restructured text directives now, which is good news. Now I just need to generate something that looks like this. So what will that be? There might be a way for Sphinx to tell me what is actually being generated here. Let's see. So this command will go into docs and run this command. So maybe I can run this directly. Path Sphinx build will be found, and I need to put in doc everywhere. Is that it? Right. Nothing is outdated, everything's fine, which is not actually true because I changed my extension, so this one file probably is outdated now. Let's save it, and maybe that'll force Sphinx to reread it. And then it needs to prepare documents, generate the index, and it's done. I have the new thing here. So Sphinx can generate HTML, but it can also generate a lot of other stuff, and I'm hoping one of the other stuff would be a some dump of the nodes required for this production display. So let's see what kind of builder Sphinx has. Pseudo XML. Compact pre-printed pseudo XML files displaying the internal structure of the intermediate document trees. This looks perfect for me. So instead of HTML, I'll put in pseudo XML. Oh, and I should probably put also pseudo XML here. Probably don't have a make target for that. So let's see, it probably started writing something. That would be in build pseudo XML about. All right, paragraph, target, comment, right? So this looks like XML or HTML, except it has indentation and it doesn't have any closing tags. It's interesting. And I wanted to look in reference top level components. So reference is not written out yet, so I need to wait for Sphinx. And then maybe I'll see what kind of nodes I need to put in. Library. Reference top level components. And file input is a node called production list, which has production reference. That's it. Okay, let's maybe look at something more complicated like this compound statement in compound statements. So there's a production list with a production with lots of productions, and the continuation productions don't have a token name. Right. That looks usable. Now, how do I construct a production list node? Is there something in Sphinx docs that tells me no? Is there something in DocuTils that tells me? Documentation overview, API reference material, anything on nodes. This is syntax. Demo. documents tree. Should see the DocUtils nodes module. Yeah, that would be nice if I could see it. Maybe production list is Sphinx specific. There's a source code for it. There's a production list nodes. How do I get it? How do I? Huh, here it is. Doctrine node classes added by Sphinx. Ah, here it is. Okay. So production list has a raw source, children, and attributes. Okay, so I need to I guess import this and create it. Production list, and I make a production list with the children being, oh, it's star children, so I just put in the children. I need to put in the raw source. Leave that as default, and then I put in children, and I just so that would be let's look at this again. Production needs a production. Okay, I guess the production would be in the same place. There's raw source, text, and children. So raw source text would be for now the file input, maybe, and then children, which is this thing for now. Maybe that needs to be wrapped in text. No, it's text. I don't know how much of this needs to be wrapped in text here. Let's try it like this. There are also some attributes I need to set, which is this token name, and IDs. Our token Python grammar file input. Okay, that's interesting. Blah 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 blah. File input. Okay. I wonder what that will do. I don't want sudo XML. Maybe I do want sudo XML. Just take a look at what that will do. And I need to save this file before so Sphinx picks it up. I'll refresh here, and I have production list, production with IDs and token name and XML files, blah blah blah, preserve. File input. This file input is probably the part here, which I might not need. And then I have a new line here, and I don't have any reference. That'll come later. Right, so this looks good. Maybe I don't need this this file input thing. That's, what is that? Text. Interesting. Maybe I don't need any text, and I'll just leave it blank. But overall that looked good. One thing more I need to emulate that other production list is this reference. And reference might be a DocuTools node instead of a Sphinx one. Reference to be completed. Please help complete this decades-old document by contributing. Oh dear. Okay. I guess I would need to do that on SourceForge. I would much rather contribute to Sphinx documentation, I guess. Alright, do we have any examples of reference nodes by specific nodes? Ah, here it is. Nodes reference. It has a title, which there's a reference. It has a title and a text. No, it has two things here, and it has a ref URI. Internal true. Okay. So let's see if I can use that. Reference. This title will probably be literal. That's something from Sphinx. No. So let's just put in text there for now. And the text I want is the statement. And it looks like that is just a string. And then it needs some kind of ref URI, which looks like this, and I have no idea how to generate that. Oh no, I do. It's the same ID. same idea as before. Same idea as I put in here. Well, let's just put in the original. And then the reference also should be internal, because I guess it's within the same document. I really have some questions for a Sphinx expert here. So let's see if this will give me what I want. No. I did forget a comma. Line 23. Okay, build succeeded, and let's see. There's a production list with a production that has a new line. Oh, I haven't saved this file, so Sphinx thinks it's unchanged. Okay. Refresh again. So production list has a reference that's internal. It has a ref URI, and inside there's this literal that I don't know. Oh, it's literal text. Oh, it's probably just Sphinx monospace text, so reference literal will link to the statement. That's yeah, let's add that later. Let me build the HTML now and look at the actual output. String object has no attribute extend. Thank you, Sphinx. That is really nice to know. Yeah. Yeah, very, very helpful. So something in here needs to be a list, not a string. Okay. Can I make Sphinx be very verbose? Yes, good. Emits a lot of events. And it rereads everything, because once Sphinx fails with an error, it then needs to throw away its cache and rebuild everything from scratch. Wow, Sphinx really has a lot of events it emits. Missing reference and doctrine resolved. I guess as homework I should read all of Sphinx documentation, see what I'm doing wrong. Ah, here it is. Here's a traceback. Okay, Sphinx parallel errors. Oh, so Sphinx just joined the thread and didn't give me the original traceback. It only gave me the text of the error. Huh. Does that mean I can't build in parallel to get the error out? That would be unfortunate. That would be unfortunate. So if I don't build in parallel, this will take a long time. But I might get the actual exception traceback. So let me, in the meantime, look in Sphinx documentation for any hints. Sphinx is designed to be extensible on several levels. Adding new builders, extending the markup, add code to hook points. Okay. There's extension tutorials. Might be interesting. Build phases: init, reading, consistency checks, resolving, writing. Extension metadata. Okay, there's version, env version, parallel read safe, parallel write safe, and defaults to true. Okay. So there's API. Developing a to-do extension. There's a tutorial I could follow. Okay, I might follow that one day, probably not on the stream. There's extension tutorials, hello world, to do recipe. Is there anything on how to get an error from Sphinx? Don't see that. What is CLI? Nope. Maybe I should look at the docs for this reference. That might be in DocuTools. Oh yeah, that's to be completed. Maybe I should just look at the doc string. Here it is. I got an exception from Sphinx and it says IDs extend, others pop IDs. Right, so it looks like this IDs needs to be a list rather than a string. Looks good. Let's see now. Do I risk running the next build in parallel and losing the exception? Probably not. There'll be one more. So in the meanwhile, let's look at this documentation for DocuTools node reference. Says raw source, a string, text, a string, children attributes. Alright, not much more to it. Okay. Does Sphinx add nodes production have something similar? No, not really. Okay, let's just wait for Sphinx to finish. All right. There it is. Finished without error. And let's see what this looks like. It looks exactly the same. I forgot a space here and I don't have more text here. So it looks like I'm now able to generate the production lists with my Sphinx extension, which is the first part toward generating them from the syntax description that Python uses. So I guess if I do this and the missing part and this space, then I should get exactly the same thing as we get in the current docs. Let me try to speed up this build. Oh, it'll probably say that nothing changed, so I need to save this. And I saved it just in time for it to notice. And it looks like the file is written, so there we go. And if I look at the source, this looks almost the same. I just don't have this code and pre. Right, so the statement here inside the reference should be a literal. And maybe a literal is as a docutils thing. Let's see. Docutils nodes. Nodes literal. So it needs raw source, text, children attributes. Okay. So which one of these is it? Which one of these should I change to literal? Maybe I want to look at reference, nodes reference. So reference takes raw source, text, children. Okay. So maybe this should be the same thing. So if I want a literal like that, let's see, literal, it has a class called xref. That might be a list as well. Okay, let's see if that works. Oh, it's just nodes literal. Importing it wrong. Oh, when the reference had raw input, so maybe this shouldn't be a node, but it should be the raw input itself. Maybe the documentation has something on that. No. No idea where to look for that. I wonder if there's a way to tell Sphinx to just build a part of the documentation. Oh, ooh, what is that? What happened here? Reference has raw source and text and then children, right? So I need raw source, text, and then start the children. I wonder if there's a better way to construct these nodes. Looks like everything gets two of the same arguments. Okay, so raw source, text, and then the literal. I guess that literal was just converted to a string. I need to touch this. Right. Looks the same. Is it the same? File input. And this thing looks exactly the same. Except for this. No, that I put in the same thing there. So this whole thing except for the part at the start looks the same. Let's see. Oh. I copy this. Select that. And do a little diff. Oh, there's some difference, so let's look at this in the editor. So this href is different, and from then on everything's the same. So I guess the part that needs to change is this ref URI. Let's put in a to-do note for now. There'll probably be a way to generate the reference properly. But otherwise, this looks great. This looks like I can now generate these from the actual grammar. So how does this look for now? It looks like a proof of concept, and that's fine. I think it's enough for a git commit. So let's add this spec fragment. So I want Sphinx extension that can generate a production list. There we go. Once we can generate a production list, we can replace what the docs already have written by hand by something we generate, and then we hope that we generate something that's usable for humans. And from that we can then get the Railroad diagrams. So how will this work? To generate the right production lists, I need to know the top level things that I will document. So I will need to know that I'm documenting this, where am I? This file input, interactive input, and for example, statement, things like that. and not, for example, this statements, right? This is useless in documentation, and I will not have a separate separate section for that in the docs. So this will either get folded into here where it's referenced, or it'll become a separate rule kind of along the thing that needs it, right? So so once I know which ones of these are kind of the top level things I want to document in the docs, then I can generate them. But to generate each one, I will need to read pretty much the entire file here and see how they're interrelated. So I will probably for the first pass do this with a configuration file for the documentation. So we'll have a config file that'll list the top level things. Then we'll have the grammar itself. I will use these to sort of generate the grammar fragments, let's say, for docs. And these will then get included in the Sphinx docs, right? I will need this separate step in between because I need to consult the whole grammar file at once. And I probably don't want to generate these fragments for every, well, like all of these fragments for every fragment that needs to be put in the docs. So I will need a separate step, at least for now, to generate the fragments for the docs. Right, and I have 8 minutes left, which means I'll probably not get very far, but let's at least start. So I will have a configuration file somewhere in docs. Tools, extensions. Where would I have? Where would I put a configuration related to the grammar in the documentation? Do I put it in doc, or do I put it in grammar here, somewhere alongside the Python gram? I don't know. Let's just take an empty file and save it in the doc. Then when I send the pull request, the reviewer might tell me where this actually goes. So this will be peg fragments dot. Let's go with TOML as the file format, and in TOML I will need a section, and that section will have, or maybe this is just a list of names. Right, let's rename this as txt for now. And I will say that I want to document this file input, interactive input, eval input. Oh, file input, interactive input, eval input, and then let's look at the grammar itself. There's file, interactive, eval. I didn't rename these yet. And I don't want to document these statements, but I do want to document the statements separately. So let's do that. And now I want to create a little script that will take these, take the grammar specification, and generate something that's usable for this file rule, which I renamed to file input. So that will be statements. It'll put in the statements as well because those are needed, but then it will leave the statement as a link, assuming that it's documented somewhere else in the docs. Hope that makes sense. So how do I do that? I might want to create a new script, and I always don't know where to put these scripts. Where do I put them in docs? Do I put them in the parser, in the peg generator? The most important choice here. Oh, I see. Somebody joined. Hello.
Hi. I wasn't sure if I should make a comment, or is it useful for me to comment?
Oh, definitely. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, the question of where to put like that kind of script, I think may depend on the project. And it may be worth looking at the Django folks have some very good like editorial guides for where to put different parts of documentation. I think for now it might make sense to put it in the docs part of the tree, just because it's not, unless you think it's likely to change. If the content is likely to change from one to another, then what you could do is put an include statement in the restructured text and then refer to.
So I don't know if I want to. So it's kind of a cross. It's on one hand, it's part of the documentation.
Yeah.
And it's in some sense it should be part of the docs build.
Yes.
And on another hand, it's part of what's generated from the grammar. Right? So there's this whole tool chain that takes the grammar file and generates the C code and the Python code and whatever's needed from that. And that is regenerated whenever the grammar changes. Right, so okay. I was thinking I would put it in here for now, because one thing about this tool is that you need to set up the Python path so these get imported properly, and have this then generate a file that would go in the docs.
Yes.
Which maybe the peg fragments file here would be better over there.
Yes, possibly.
As well. I don't know. But on the other hand, these files can always be moved, and I'll probably iterate on this, and maybe they won't be needed in the end. So that the question of where to put things isn't all that important. But I guess at least for now, I do want to put the script with all the other scripts that have to do with the grammar. And one thing, one interesting script here is the grammar visualizer, which basically walks the grammar and prints it out. And I'm really thankful for this script because it's a really nice example of how to manipulate the grammar from Python.
Oh, right? Wow, that is cool.
So I will take this thing and just save it as fragment generator. Well, no. Namespace is in docs. Okay. And what this will need to do is walk through all the rules that are here in the peg fragments, and basically write out the lines needed for each one of them, right? So if the file input references statements, then it would write out the file line and the statements line, and if that references statement, it would then go on, except statement is its own top level thing, so it would stop here. So for the first one, I want these two lines basically to be output.
Right. It's almost like each one of those is a diagram.
Right. Well, then I would want to merge the statements into here, so it's easier to follow. But yes, each one of those would be pretty much the box in here. Like here it has one thing. Here it has a bunch of things. But that's what I want to do. Basically, split the grammar up into little chunks that then can have text in between them. Sure. But that's for the next week because I'm out of time now.
Okay.
Thanks for joining.
My pleasure. I'm sorry I didn't get here earlier. I was just tied up, but yeah.
It's fine. I know it's a bad time, but I can't really do better.
No, it's well, good.
See you next week, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. Cheers. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.